Yo, all right. This is one that I am very happy about. I'm excited to have this guest on. Nick Harris of DallasCowboys.com. Somebody who, throughout the draft process, I think that we all realized that a star is being born because you guys know that on this channel, if you don't do the work or if you're not going to put the work in, I can't really respect certain opinions, and it's no fluff. One thing about Nick Harris, he shined his work. He actually has a great article out where he talked to all the coaches that of the Cowboys players that were drafted. I mean, he just did some amazing work. He's an amazing person on Twitter. He puts out a lot of good information. So, Nick Harris, thank you for joining the channel, buddy.
Man, pleasure's mine. Thanks for having me, dog.
Yeah, man. So before we actually get into the off season, because I think this worked out great, because as things were going on, we don't know the draft, what's happening at OTA'S. Now we can kind of put it all together. Before we get to that, Nick, I want to know a little bit about you. What got you into scouting? What got you into football? Why are you working with the Cowboys? I want to talk about you for a second, so if you don't mind.
Man, so how I kind of got in the industry, it's a funny story, but it's kind of long winded. But I'm going to try to shorten it a little bit. So I was a first gen college student going to the University of Texas down in Austin, and I had to figure out a way to make some money, and I wanted to do it in an area where I at least wanted to have fun doing it. Knew I wanted to do sports journalism, sports broadcasting, something of the sort. And at that time, there was a position open at 247sports.com to cover Baylor Bears recruiting. And so I was like, man, I'll hop on that. Did that part-time for about a year, fell in love with it, made my way up 24/7 Sports, and ended up getting hired full-time. And then after a couple of years at the company, went to rivals.com to be a national recruiting analyst with them. So that was covering 6 different states, traveling those 6 different states, scouting kids. You know, if for the fans out there, if you're seeing guys in high school that have the stars on them, I was the guy that was putting the stars on them. So you can come to me whenever the 2 stars drafted in the first round. You can yell at me. But other than that, it would also at the same time covering these guys' recruitment. So like whenever they're taking offers or they're committing places, staying on top of that, having stories ready and things of that nature. I'm really good friends with Kyle Yeomans of DallasCowboys.com. We go back a long ways. And whenever they had a spot open up at DallasCowboys.com, he hit me up about it, and he was like, "Hey, is this something you'd be interested in?" It was honestly a really tough decision. You know, it's a path that I kind of carved for myself in college football recruiting. It was either stay there or try this new path out where I can try to take my talents and take my level to the NFL level. And I took the chance, and here I am after about a year. I'm so glad that I did. I feel blessed every day to be here. But that's how I ended up in this spot. And, man, DallasCowboys.com, they give me a ton of freedom to just kind of do what I want to do. When it comes to the scouting specific side of things, whenever draft time came around, it was like, hey, man, do what you want to do, and we'll kind of support whatever you want to do. And so I just kind of threw as much spaghetti at the wall to see what will stick, and we'll reevaluate here in about a month to see what actually did stick, and we'll probably bring that back next year and probably not bring back the ones that fell. But other than that, man, I'm really blessed to be here.
Man, we were talking pre-show, and I said I got a different level of respect for guys who are on the ground. I was telling you about my background in youth sports, and sometimes people will laugh at some of that stuff, but it was crazy because we were talking about a few players that we knew via the youth game, and like we said, you're watching future stars. So the fact that you put in the work, did the traveling, and that's like I tell people, you can kind of tell even in the high school ranks, and when these guys are getting stars, you can kind of tell who's going to be who. So I say this: football is football is football. At the high school level, at the college level, yes, things get faster, but I still say if a guy can play, a guy can play. And the fact that you were able to kind of carve that lane, I honestly, bro, I think it's very inspirational. And I say this: it's no fluff with you. I love that. It's no fluff. You don't talk around points. You get right to the points, whether it's with the draft reports or whatever. So I thought that was really clean of them to bring you in. I just think that it's a great addition to the team. All right.
Appreciate that.
Now that we've done that, I've given my soapbox. I've given my love to Nick Harris.
Let's
Nick,
get into it.
I was about to say, let's get to the nitty gritty because now I want to put you on the spot a little bit. Nick, there's no bones about it how people felt about the first pick. Now, I prefaced the article you wrote about the coaches, excuse me, with each pick. I want to talk about Tyler Guyton because I've been steadfast. I don't like when our fan base kind of overreacts one way or the other. I think that's how you end up with. I'll be honest. I think everybody loved the Mozzie Smith pick, and as we stand today, I won't say that Mozzie's a bust, but there's work that needs to be done. He needs to figure it out, and that's to be expected of a defensive tackle. On the other side, I think that there was a conversation around a Tyler Guyton where it's like, I don't know about that pick. How did you feel about the Tyler Guyton pick, first of all, and talking to his coaches and his coach, who coached some great offensive linemen? Like, what is your vibe when it came to that pick?
Yeah, I think what's wild whenever you look at the Tyler Guyton pick specifically, I think if you had told me going into draft night, hey, the Cowboys are going to come away with Tyler Guyton here in the first round, I would have been like, I don't know. Yeah. But they move back to 29, pick up draft capital where they can pick up a guy like Cooper Beebe on day 2 and pair those two guys together. Now, if you had told me that going into night 1, I would have been like, oh, okay, I see the vision. And here's the thing with Tyler Guyton, and I think we saw the worst of him during the draft process and we saw the best of him during the draft process. And that's because he's still very raw. And I think there's not going to be a might to it. There will be some learning moments for him in his rookie season. He might not even be ready to go week 1 as far as an NFL product goes. He'll have to be. I think he's going to have to be starting at left tackle to be ready to go week 1 in Cleveland. But the thing with him is he's only been playing the position for a little over 2 years. He's only been starting at the position for a little over a year. Originally defensive tackle going into college, made his transition to Oklahoma, and offensive line coach at Oklahoma, Bill Bedenbaugh, as you said, he's put out a ton of great offensive linemen during his time in Norman. He's talked about how Tyler Guyton took that maturity step from when he got to Oklahoma just 2 years ago to now, and now it's an all business approach. I mean, whenever he was drafted, the very next day he got an Airbnb in Dallas so he could get up to Frisco and start working. And I think that says a lot about the transition that he did make whenever he was at Oklahoma, because you talk to people at TCU and it's his previous school, and you hear about the talent, you hear about the raw athleticism to be so big at 6'7", 320 pounds, but he maybe lacked a little bit of the work ethic, a little bit of the determination, a little bit of off-field immaturity. But the time that he spent in Oklahoma, you heard that in the beginning, you didn't hear that at the end. And I think that's a big thing you can look at whenever you look at his development and you look at his track record. He's getting to Dallas already on a projected line. But if this is the top of the line right here, he's like right here. And I think there's still a long ways for him to go. If you're looking at guys who probably are going to get that 5th-year option on their rookie deal, I'd be shocked if Tyler Guyton is not one of those guys. That being said, after 2 seasons of this rookie class, I don't think he's going to be within the top 10 of the rookies of the 2024 class, just because I think he's going to take that long to kind of get going. But once he does, I think the Cowboys are going to have a really good product on their hands. I think they're going to have a guy that's going to play for a long time too.
Yeah. A lot to unpack there. And I think what you said about the growth in his maturity is the one that I want to stay with. So, like you said with Bedenbaugh, I think that people didn't understand just how good of a coach he was. Lane Johnson, the list goes on and on when it comes to Trent Williams. The list goes on and on to about the offensive lineman that he's coached, Nick. Let me ask you this. I've heard it a lot, whether it was, Brock Hoffman has a good podcast. I get some nuggets. I've got some nuggets throughout listening to you guys. His athleticism, Nick, is it real? You've seen him in person. You've seen him live. Obviously, they're not hitting. They're not going full speed. Is the athleticism in the bend real? Because that's what I've heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned the bend, because we've already kind of seen that with OTA'S and minicamp. Granted, it's really tough to evaluate offensive linemen in those settings. It's basically the underwear Olympics. And other than that, man, you can kind of see them get around on the edge and kind of like account for speed coming off the edge, but they're not putting their hands on him or anything like that. But you can see how low he gets just because it is muscle memory. He gets around to the edge, and it is just muscle memory to get low and to have that bend. I think that's going to be the thing that's probably going to help him the most in year 1, because like I said, if he's not starting week 1, it's probably going to be Chuma Edoga or someone, Matt Waletzko maybe taking that extra step. He's going to have to be the guy to start week 1 at left tackle. I think that is going to be the thing that helps him assimilate to that position a little bit better than maybe he would have if he ended up on some other team. That being said, I still love the bend. I love the athleticism. The punch power and the punch placement, that might be where he might need to work the most. I think his hands might need the most work when it comes to just figuring out where to place guys. And I think whenever he gets around on the edge and he's able to do that, I think give him half a season and I think he'll be all right. But, man, I worry about Myles Garrett week 1. I just hate that's who he's going to have to go against week 1.
It's like you really just like, hey, just go. Just literally just throw him off the nest. Yeah. I don't know if you can fly, but don't hit the ground.
Yeah.
You know, I heard something about that matchup, and it said, he's going to have to deal with Myles' power, his speed of power, his ghost rush, everything that Myles can give you. But I think the one thing, and it's crazy to say, oh, Tyler Guyton will have any type of advantage over a Myles Garrett, is his length. I've heard a lot of guys talk about his length. When you see him in person, Nick, is it real? Is his height? Is it real? Okay.
Absolutely. Every bit of 6'7", 320 pounds. I mean, that long wingspan, it helps him get around on that edge. And you can see it on tape at Oklahoma. They played towards the back end of the season in Oklahoma last year with a little bit wider offensive line splits than I've seen usually from the Sooners. And I wonder why. I would love to dive into why that is, but you see him able to maximize his area and space as a result of that. And his wingspan is a key contributor of that, able to get around on the edge and seal guys off from the edge. And you see it in person, man. I mean, he looks like a freak. Whenever he walked in on the first day, it's like, okay, yeah, that's an NFL first rounder, 100%.
Man, this is good stuff. If you guys are watching this, Nick Harris is on. He's on the channel, man. He does great work. You guys make sure you follow him. You guys make sure you check him out. He is the future. I wouldn't be surprised if he's on, he's a star. All right, Nick Harris. So we want to get down to the nitty-gritty. I'm not going to ask you about every draft pick. I think every pick has been covered ad nauseum, but you're in the building. You're around these guys. You've been around athletes at every level. So I think that you're probably more qualified because seeing these guys come up and now seeing them and seeing how they're going to deal with adults. I've always said this. It's tough bringing in young quarterbacks in any locker room because, like, hey, man, like, you're responsible for his check. You're responsible for a 30-year-old vet's check. You have to be on your grind. Nick, give me 2 draft picks who you just say, I just feel good about these guys. I have my 2, but I want to know Nick Harris right now on the spot. We it's time. Give me 2 guys, Nick, and you just say you watch them move around, you watch them talk. Give me 2.
I know one for sure, and I'm going to think of the other one while I'm talking.
Okay.
Bill Jones at CBS 11 asked me last week off camera. He said, who's the rookie draft pick that we're not talking enough about right now? And I said Kalen Carson. And I think whenever you look at the cornerback depth and, Stephon Gilmore's still out there in free agency. I think that needs to be mentioned. But let's say the Cowboys do not bring him back. There is a huge hole as far as depth goes in the cornerback room. I mean, I feel like that's been the case for the last 3-4 seasons, but it's still prevalent. And you have guys that you have tried over and over again that haven't really panned out. You can look at Nashawn Wright. You can look at Israel Mukwamu. Yes, those 2 guys have had their moments, but they've also had their down moments. They used a 6th-round pick, jumped up on a 6th-round pick to get Eric Scott last year. He wasn't able to see the field during his rookie season. I think Kalen Carson is going to be the guy that they call upon if there is an injury to either Deron Bland, Trayvon Diggs, or Jordan Lewis, because I think he can play inside or outside. He's got the physicality to do both. He steps up in the run game and plays really well in those areas. He's physical, he's sound, he's technical. I really like what he brings, and you saw all of that in OTA'S and minicamp. Him and Al Harris have grown to be just like this during practice, and I think that's big. I think that speaks a lot to the development that they are trying to get out of Carson. I think he's a guy that they will call upon at some point during the 2024 season. As far as the other rookie, I couldn't think of one while I was sitting there talking, but I'll go ahead and throw in Cooper Beebe just because the value that they were able to get from him, as I mentioned kind of in the Tyler Guyton question, the value that they were able to get from him was so big. And I think having a guy that can play guard or play center whether he plays this year or not, he's going to have his opportunity to shine at some point. And I think the more that you elevate that competition and the interior of that offensive line, I think the better that entire unit will be, A, but also B, the running game. I think the better that will be too. Cooper Beebe, he's cerebral. He comes from a football family. I mentioned it on the draft show whenever he got picked, but I was exchanging texts back and forth with a coach at Kansas State, and he said, I guarantee you could throw Cooper Beebe's mom into a room of coaches, and she'll know more ball than everyone in that room. So he comes from a ball family. And it's funny because it was like a couple weeks ago, I was on Twitter, and his mom had posted that she was going on a date night with Cooper's dad, and they were at an arena football league game. Like, who does that? So it's he comes from a ball family. He's cerebral. He's a good kid. He's physical. He knows how to get guys and twist and turn them on the ground. I think Cooper Beebe is going to be a really valuable pick whenever we look up in a few years.
Okay, so Cooper Beebe, Kalen Carson. So you took one of mine. I think that Cooper Beebe is widely known as the steal of this draft. Not only just for the Cowboys, like amongst the Cowboys community, but like a lot of people who cover the draft, they just had nothing but good things to say about Cooper Beebe. I mean, I remember this time last year, Cooper Beebe could have been guard 1, interior lineman 1. And so to get him in the 3rd round, I have this theory about guards because so many tackles are now being moved that true guards kind of get forgotten about. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe that happened with Cooper Beebe is like the guy can play. His film was flawless. I thought his 2022 tape was better than 2023, but the 2023 tape wasn't bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of nitpicky. So I'll say this about Kalen Carson. He played St. Charles Bears. He played locally youth football. I know people who know him very well. Psycho competitor. Nick, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Psycho. 100%. Psycho competitor. I think the Cowboys fans are going to be like, it's just, and obviously I'm from the DMV, but like when I say that, it's something about that DMV swag, like him, Trayvon, they're both from the DMV. I've actually coached against Trayvon's brother. They're just very competitive people. It's going to be hard to keep Kalen Carson off the field. Little grabby, but I love that one. For me, the other one, Nick, I just like Marist Liufau. I know that was a very polarizing pick amongst Cowboys fans. Why? Because they wanted a running back. I get it, but I'll say this: when I watched Marist at the Senior Bowl, Nick, I can honestly say that he looked better than some of the highly touted linebackers in the class. Would you agree with that? You were down at the Senior Bowl, you weren't?
Yeah, I was.
Okay. Yeah, and he just looked better. He flew around better than some of the highly touted linebackers in the class. And I just believe that, like, if it's Mike Zimmer and you're giving him a role day one, go rush, go play forward, I think that Marist can do it, but it'll be yet to be seen.
I think he's going to be Mr. Third Down for this defense. And I don't think he's going to start. I think if you're looking at the 3 starters that Mike Zimmer will roll out for the defensive unit at linebacker, it's going to be Eric Kendricks, Damone Clark, and DeMarvion Overshown. And I think Marist Liufau is going to be your third down, ace up the sleeve type weapon because he can do 2 things really well on third down. One, obviously cover. He's got a big time safety background from his time in college or from his time in high school, transitioning into early college. He's got kind of a safety build a little bit. He's a little bit wider because he put on weight at Notre Dame, but he has that build. He has those instincts. But also one thing that I think is just so much fun, and it was something I love to point on whenever we were talking about Marist Liufau during the draft process, was his ability to rush the passer on certain instances because they will use him in some key situations. He'll line up like he's going to be covering on third down, and he will just take off right for the quarterback. He's able to get to him or at least affect the play. I think he's going to be able to do those things for Mike Zimmer. And I'll never get this answer because it's kind of diving too much into scheme, but I would be shocked if that's not a big reason why Mike Zimmer didn't turn on the film and say, hey, I like this kid. Let's look at this kid a little bit closer. And I think both of those instances will give Cowboys fans some good things to look forward to here in 2024.
Yeah, the craziest thing is Zimmer came out and said, man, he knows every position. He's asking a bunch of questions. And so, like, again, your point about him being a great blitzer, one of the things that I noticed on film was he's very physical at the point. So, like, blockers can't get on him. He plays blocks very well. He plays that force technique very well. I just thought that our linebackers struggled with that last year. Whenever there was power and gap schemes, I
Absolutely.
just when Lyman got on his next level, Nick, it was bad.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's part of the look that the Cowboys want to have. Not only having a bigger linebacker, because he is bigger. Like if I was looking at that rookie picture, and he stands like he's a big guy.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so I just think that, and they want players who are going to play a certain way downhill. Okay, two more, Nick, and I'll let you get out of here, man, because you know, just this time is valuable. But I also say this: just you doing a full offseason recap for the fans, for the people on our channel, it's a gem. And so I want to ask you this:
Mhm.
DeMarvin Overshown, Trayvon Diggs, two key pieces that I think. Let's start with Overshown. I think that Overshown, how it looked, and obviously it was preseason, but he's one of those. If you know, you know. You watch him. I think had he not been injured, Nick, he would have been a star or at a budding star for the Cowboys. Would you agree with that?
100%, 100%. You look at the role that he would have filled whenever Leighton Vander Esch went down. I think they tried to do the best they could. Dan Quinn tried to do the best that he could with that linebacker unit that he had available to him
Yeah.
whenever Leighton went down last year. And I think what you probably would have seen was Damone Clark would have completely just taken Leighton Vander Esch's role instead of having this type of hybrid role where he had to be in a million places at once. And then Marquise Bell was also kind of doing the same thing of being in a million places at once. He could have just focused on a specific role similar to how he will this year. And then you also would have had DeMarvion Overshown, who can kind of play in space and be that guy that can come downhill if he needs to, but also kind of like with Marist Liufau, can play in space and be able to cover the pass across the middle and be able to take on tight ends one-on-one. He would have been huge last year. And I think you look at most of the losses from 2023, and you can kind of point to the linebacker position being a key cog factor of quite a few of those losses. Look at the Buffalo Bills loss, James Cook running for 1,000,000 yards. If you had told me going into that game, hey, Josh Allen's only going to throw for, 93 yards today, I'd be like, wow, what a win. And that was just not what happened. You look at the Green Bay Packers loss. You can look at not even really Miami, San Francisco early in the season, though, all over them. So I think if you had a DeMarvion Overshown on that defense, would he have won those games? Probably not, but I think they would have had a lot better chance to stay in those games and at least not allow the snowball to continue to fall in those games, because that's what happened. I mean, you look at mid first quarter and each of those three games that I mentioned, the Niners, the Bills, and the Packers, you knew what was about to happen. And I think the only one where you maybe had a shot to get back into it late was the Packers, but it was just too little too late by that point. But I think DeMarvion Overshown, you can throw him in this defense this year with the expectation that he can bring what you expected him to bring last year, but also not with the urgency that he maybe would have had to have brought with it last year, because they bring in a guy like Eric Kendricks, they draft a guy like Marist Liufau, so he can really take his time as far as development goes to get back from that injury. I think he's going to be just fine whenever he is 100% full go.
Yeah, man. You said it with Overshown. I just think he brings a great vibe. Nick, how does he look? Are they gonna slow him down? He looks he looked like he's on steroids.
Whoa. Yeah.
But how is he moving around? Is it gonna be one of these things, the last week of training camp he's out there, or are they gonna what do you think? How do they carry him this offseason?
I think he's gonna be ready to go whenever they hit the
field.
I think he is. You talk to everybody around the program, I think Overshown, the expectation is that he's going to be ready to go. He probably will not start camp on the PUP list. Again, that's just me theorizing. There's nothing official just yet, but I truly expect him to be out there week one. And if not week one, soon after that. Trayvon Diggs, there might be a week or two where he might need a little bit of assimilating as far as getting back on the field, but it wouldn't surprise me either if he's not on the PUP list whenever we get out to Oxnard.
Okay, last two, Nick. I want to ask you now, I was big throughout the draft process. And I want to say this. The Cowboys plan, seeing it through, like you said, with being able to parlay Tyler Guyton and Cooper Beebe, only a fool will argue that. Because if you hit on both of those, you've literally reset your line for the next 10 years. And I think that you've done that. And I think that you're going to hit on those guys. Dallas doesn't have two bad back-to-back drafts. That being said, Nick, receiver 3 was a concern of mine. I don't know if you saw on Twitter, I was really like, I would have tried to attack the receiver position more or less than even a running back position earlier. How does Nick Harris today, pre-camp, feel about the receiver 3 battle? Because here's the deal. You play the Green Bay game. You play a good defense. They're not letting CeeDee Lamb beat them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not.
Yeah.
Jake Ferguson is coming. I like Brandon Cooks, and Michael Gallup didn't. He just wasn't good enough last year.
Yeah.
Is there a guy who could consistently beat another team's number 2 on his team? How does Nick Harris feel about this receiver 3 core?
I honestly, truthfully, I wouldn't say I feel great about it, but I don't feel bad about it. You have a lot of young talent in that room. I think they're going to elevate each other to get to that level. I think Jalen Tolbert's going to be your guy at wide receiver 3 whenever they do hit the field week 1. But it wouldn't surprise me if a guy like Jalen Brooks or a Ryan Flournoy is in that spot instead. I mean, all 3 of those guys, I think that's going to be what kind of makes up the rest of the wide receiver roster on the 53-man. You also have Kevontae Turpin that'll be thrown in there too. But I think with Jalen Tolbert, you saw the step that he took from year 1 to year 2. I don't think anybody could have really projected that this time last year. And I think if he takes just as big of a step going into this year, we won't be worrying about anything a year from now when it comes to, hey, we need Jalen Tolbert to take that wide receiver 2 jump going into next season if they don't bring back Brandon Cooks. So it's a situation where, I mean, they spent a high-value pick on Jalen Tolbert a couple of years ago. They are going to trust the process with him. Would it surprise me if they brought in a receiver, a veteran guy to throw in the mix with him? No, it wouldn't surprise me. But I think Jalen Tolbert's more than ready to take on that task. Him and Dak have grown really close together. Him and Trey Lance have grown really close together. So he's going to get a ton of burn during preseason. I think that's going to be huge for his confidence. I like the depth of that receiver room. I mean, we can start talking about the practice squad if we really want to get in the nitty gritty of it.
No, take it away, man.
Johnson, Jalen Cropper, all those guys.
I like Crooms.
Yeah, Corey Crooms, Cam Johnson, all those guys bring something to the field. I think you're going to have a fun preseason with Trey Lance throwing to those array of weapons. But what I like from Jalen Tolbert is his confidence right now, and he didn't have that this time a year ago. And you saw that build as the season went on last year. And now that he's going into 2024 with that, he doesn't have to go under a new offensive system for the first time in his career. He's going to be fine. I think he's going to be just fine. I think people are maybe sleeping on Jalen Tolbert a little bit.
Listen, to hear from you being in the building, this is because I just, the receiver class, we studied it at nauseum, Nick.
Yeah.
This receiver class, depending on how it pans, could have been. Listen, I top 5 receiver class of all time if it hits. I mean, when there were questions about if there's a guy better than Marvin Harrison Jr., I remember watching him his first game. The first game I really got hit to him was in that Rose Bowl. I was like, man, this kid is stupid.
Yeah.
And and you got Malik Neighbors. You had when Troy Franklin is a 4th round pick or whatever. I mean, so the point is, okay, if Nick says, then I get it. Now, this is the one that I really want you to dig deep on, because there's a lot out there and you've had eyes on it. But I'll say this, and I don't want to bury the lead. When you see the starter get reps, and then you see the second string or the person that they're trying to make the second string, and you'll probably get where I'm going with this. It's not going to look the same, but does that mean that he's bad? So this is going to be the biggest, come training camp, get ready. It's going to be the biggest story, Nick. YouTubers, content creators, DallasCowboys.com. Trey Lance, is he any good, Nick? Is this a waste of our time? What's the deal? You tell me what you've seen. I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but what are your thoughts on Trey Lance, Nick?
I'll give you a little bit of context as far as how I think about quarterbacks, because I've put so much time and effort into evaluating quarterbacks during my time scouting that I have to give you my thought process before I can give you my full.
Take your time, bro.
Trey Lance. So this kind of goes back to me scouting high school guys, and it's really tough to scout these high school guys who people are projecting to be these big-time college quarterbacks when they don't have any varsity experience. And then once they get that varsity experience, there's not a ton to see there. But, hey, we're still banking on traits. We're banking on development. I can't get sold on a guy until I see him perform in front of the bright lights. And that's kind of how I feel with Trey Lance. Yes, he could do a million things that make me feel great during the underwear Olympics of OTAs and minicamp and working out with quarterbacks, Coach Scott Tolzien before games for hours upon a time. I mean, I was there on the sideline before every single game, watching Trey Lance make every single throw that he did during those workouts with Scott Tolzien, almost to the point to where it was like, okay, we're in week 17. He's about to go into this drill. I knew what he was about to go into. I still have to see it in the preseason. That's how I feel about it. I mean, you can see a little bit more from training camp whenever pads come on and he's actually going up against live defenses at times, but we haven't seen anything up to this point. And I think the only thing that you can kind of rely on at this point is the word being spoken to you by the people that are closer in the building to him, which is Mike McCarthy, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Scott Tolzien, these guys that have been working with him day in and day out. They say that his confidence is much higher than it was whenever they got him. They say his skill set is much higher than when they got him. Me, I'm like, okay, that sounds great. Let's see it, And I think he's going to have those 3 games. He's going to have 3 opportunities to put it on display. I think he's got to hit on all 3. And Cooper Rush has proven to be a reliable backup every time he's been called upon. 4-1 as a starter, that speaks for itself. And sure, is he maybe a little bit older than Trey Lance? Absolutely. But you still want to have that reliable option if Dak Prescott were to go down with an injury. I mean, we're only 2 years removed from Cooper Rush having to come in and play 4 games during the 2022 season. So I don't think they're just going to give it to Trey. I think Cooper definitely is in the driver's seat. Trey's going to have to do something to prove that he brings a little bit more to the table. And I think what comes with that, maybe his athleticism. There are some RPO packages that were being installed during OTAs and minicamp that you see with Trey Lance that you don't see with Dak Prescott and Cooper Rush. So yes, he'll bring a different element to the offense, but what will that look like on Sundays? That'll be determined in the preseason.
Yeah, I think the one issue with Lance is the processing, and I think the processing can only get better if he plays.
Absolutely. I'm with you 100%. That's how you took the words out of my mouth, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sucks because I did a whole deep dive on Lance when he was drafted, the injuries that kept just bad time when they were happening. I mean, his first game was in a rainstorm at Chicago, the whole 9. Do I think the athleticism is real? Yes. I mean, me personally, if Dak were to get hurt and he has a good training camp and preseason, I don't know if I would want to see Cooper Rush because I just don't know how. I think the ceiling isn't as high as the floor with the offense with Cooper Rush.
Absolutely.
But that being said, I think that Cooper Rush can at least manage the offense. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like talking out of both sides of my neck. But I think that's where the whole thing with Trey Lance is we just got to see it. I even think his arm is ridiculously strong. Yeah. It's just about windows, accuracy, what does it look like? And I think that's the part where it's just like, I don't know. So
and trusting it. Confidence is going to be the biggest thing for him. I think his first drive that he goes out and takes in the preseason is going to be the biggest drive of his life. Confidence is going to be very much needed as soon as he hits that field so far.
Yeah, man. And I'll be honest, it'll be fun to see him grow. One thing that you guys do a great job of when you guys are Oxnard, getting us videos, getting visuals. So I think it'll be good to see him make mistakes. I think it'll be good to see him make throws. And let the battle begin. Like I have no problem with these guys battling. I even want Dak to feel some pressure. I don't have a problem with it because at the end of the day, it can't do anything but make all of them better.
Absolutely.
To me. So, if God willing, I mean, Trey Lance was the number 3 pick overall. If he goes out and looks like that, that's an even better problem. I mean, you just never know. Yeah. So I think, and then another thing is him being able to sit, watch Dak, watch how he deals with adversity, watch how he deals with certain things. I think it could be a good thing. Nick Harris of DallasCowboys.com. Nick, I can't thank you enough. Do you have anything else that you want to get off your chest? Anything else you want to talk about? Talk to me, bro.
One thing I would love to touch on, I think needs to be looked at before camp. A lot of fans, I think, are really worried about the running back position, and rightfully so. There's zero certainty there. I think you have this product in Ezekiel Elliott that will be RB1 at this point, at least you can assume. And there's
let's stop there. Whoa, yeah. Nick, you think that he's? I thought it was Rico's job.
No, it's going to be Zeke's. I think.
Okay.
I think he is going to be the RB1, and then everything behind him is just this big hodgepodge of different talents with different experience levels, with different skill sets, and they're going to try to bring that together to be RB2. There's a lot of concern there, and rightfully, but this is actually not about the running backs. This is about the defensive tackles. I think that is going to be the biggest position that I think it needs to be addressed at some point, either before Oxnard or during training camp. You look at Mazi Smith, and he's coming off of off-season shoulder surgery. You mentioned it early on. You don't want to call him a bust yet, but you're not getting the results yet that you expected from him from a first-round pick. You don't really see the work ethic. You don't really see him applying himself just yet. Are you comfortable with him being your one tech? And I that answer has to be no. And you look at the rest of the bodies in that room. Carl Davis, who's been in the league for a handful of years and hasn't really been able to produce, had his opportunity last year whenever Jonathan Hankins went down and was not great. And then you look at the rookies that come in the room. Denzel Daxon out of Illinois, Justin Rogers out of Auburn. What will you get from those guys? You have no idea. And I think that one tech position, man, that's the one that concerns me the most going into the offseason. It's not the running back position. Granted, there's still concern level with the running back position, but I think the defensive tackle position, if they can't figure out that one tech spot, I think there's going to be a lot of the same issues that you saw last year in defending the run. You're just going to see that closer to the line of scrimmage now. And it's going to put a lot more pressure on that second level, and you're basically asking Eric Kendricks to play two positions at the end of the day. You don't want that. And especially with a veteran of his experience level and what he's going to bring to this defense from a knowledge perspective with Mike Zimmer's system, you want to be able to have him do what he does best. I don't think he's going to do that if you have a one tech in front of him that's not doing his job.
A lot to unpack there, Nick. So I'll say this. The whole, did Mazi lose weight on purpose? Did Dan Quinn want him to get upfield? It's been kind of an exhausting conversation, but it's a real one because when I watched the film, Nick, one of the two things that really bothered me with Mazi Smith, and I'm like, is this coaching? Now, I will say this. The Cowboys knew I struggle with his name. I know his first name is Jeff, but I struggle with his last name.
That's Scanina.
Scanina, okay.
Yeah.
He gave some great nuggets about how they want to play blocks.
Yeah.
And how he wants Mazi to play. So that was good, right, Nick? But it's like, okay, when I watched the film, Nick, it was so bad how he played double teams. Yeah. Like he was literally getting blown off the ball. If he was single block, he would stack, press, do things that you want a bigger guy to do. But double teams, it was awful. Like, and I know one of my favorite D-line coaches that I when we were on the staff together, he would show me like this torque technique when you feel yourself getting double, you literally have to stop giving up ground. And like Mazi, he didn't do that at all, Nick. And so that part of it, I'm with you. Like, is it mental? Is he too light? Can he get this mass back? I mean, Justin Rogers looks bigger than him.
Yeah,
he doesn't. It doesn't. Okay, so he is. Okay, so like, is it? I don't like. That's the craziest thing for a guy who was at Michigan and we saw him do real one tech things. We saw it with our own eyes. To come to Dallas and it's like, what happened?
Yeah, that's a big question. And you ask about the weight loss thing. I get different answers from people that I ask around the building, and I don't think there is an answer. I think it was just something that happened during the course of last season. They said the shoulder was something that he had been dealing with for a while. So that's whenever the offseason hit, they decided to go ahead and get surgery on that because they feel like it limited him at times last year. So who knows? Maybe he comes off this shoulder surgery and he's able to kind of return to form as he was before he got to Dallas. But again, it's going back to the Trey Lance conversation. I'm going to have to see with my own eyes. And I think with something that I always come back to, that it's the one thing of confidence that keeps me going with Mazi Smith, because I think I reside more with the guys that are saying, hey, let's move on from Mazi Smith and try to figure out a more solidified option at defensive tackle. I reside more with that conversation, but the one thing that gives me more confidence is Jonathan Hankins last season. Over and over and over again, whenever we would ask about Mazi Smith's development, he says, look, man, defensive tackle is very different, especially in the NFL. It takes you a while to figure out the technical aspect of this job. And Mazi Smith, coming from the program that he came from, he had so much technical work to pick up on from his time getting used to Dan Quinn's system and then now getting used to Mike Zimmer's system. So that's the one thing that gives me a little bit of confidence. Like, okay, maybe it's just too early to keep looking at this guy. I'm not going to call him a bust yet. The results just need to come, though. They have to come. And I think they're going to have to come in 2024, or else they're going to have to start looking around at defensive tackle.
I'll tell you this, Nick. I appreciate your honesty because, I'm a positive guy, Mr. Positive. Let's try to make the most of it. But when you're in the building, you see it on a day to day.
Yeah.
You see, and it's you're not writing them off. That's not what we're doing here, fellas. I mean, people. But what we are saying is, there's a level of concern. I mean,
Yeah.
because the film just wasn't good, and we would be fools to try to say that it was. I'll say this. I think that in this scheme, with him not being, I don't know if he was asked to get upfield, but I do know that Dan Quinn sack, get upfield, fly upfield.
Yeah.
I think that Zimmer, the whole defense, will stress. We are going to choke the run first, and then we'll play pat. Then we have to earn. We're literally going to earn the right to rush the passer. Everybody.
Yeah.
And so, no, he doesn't have the sheer athleticism and just blessed to play football like a Michael Parsons. So when you got spoiled with him as your first round pick 2 years ago, and then you look at what Mozzie did, I get why fans are concerned. And then the truth is the film wasn't great, but I think that if there's a silver lining to it all, Nick, I think you brought in a new staff who I think, if nothing else, he's going to be taught the right way. Not saying that Dan Quinn did, but he's going to be taught the right way. So that's a good nugget right there, man.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, listen, man. I just want to say thank you so much for taking your time. I know that you're busy. Now this is what I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire, Nick.
Okay.
We did one pre-camp. I want to get you back. I know it's hard throughout the year, but I want to get you back post-camp and just kind of do a check-in. And come with it.
Yeah, come on.
Hey, Nick, listen, we'll be texting, we'll be talking. Thank you guys so much. It's Nick Harris on. What's your Twitter again, Nick?
Nick Harris DC.
Nick Harris DC. He's the man, guys. He writes some great articles. Go check in on all the draft work that he does. He's going to be doing draft work for the Cowboys here in the near future. Maybe me and him will get together and do some draft work. Listen, I can't thank you enough for coming on this channel, man. And anybody, if you guys have any questions, hit him up on Twitter. He types back. He doesn't think he hasn't turned into ESPN newscaster on us. He isn't too bougie for us. So I appreciate you for coming on.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Peace.